Most famous for taking a Tennessee hat and tossing it away in his recruiting commitment to UGA, now tossing his hat into the NFL draft. Quay Walker, the focus of this NFL draft preview from UGAsports.com. That's Brent Rollins from Pro Football Focus and UGAsports.com. I'm Dayne Young. We co-author Film Don't Lie. And by co-author, I mean do videos now, because that's what you do in 2022. And we think we can show you more that way. That's a conscious decision on our part to be able to show you what we see on tape from these guys. And Quay Walker, a guy that's jumping up draft boards as we're recording this, he just had a great pro day for Georgia, following great workouts and combines. And Brent, when you see Quay Walker, you see the physical traits that he has, not always the production at Georgia, but the physical traits, just something every NFL team is looking for right now.
When you think about 6'4", right, just a shade under 6'4", 240 pounds, that ran 4.52 at the combine and did some of the other testing today at the pro day, it's just exactly that. It's traits that you just can't teach. You can't, all the mental aspects of it, all the things you can put into, well, yeah, that guy's just bigger, stronger, faster than a lot of people, and he plays that way. And it's one of those things where I think you're going to see the buzz, at least. Some of those guys, and from the draft board perspective, what you talk about, the traits, those guys, the Dane Brugler's, the Daniel Jeremiah's, those evaluators, they are looking at those traits, versus someone like PFF, where we're combining those traits with also in the projection with the production. Because like you see on the ticker on the bottom, we got to see him more this year than we ever had. He played 611 snaps this past season. That was more than he had in the previous 3 seasons combined. So you actually have tape on him, and it's all this year. So he's an interesting eval, and where he fits, I think what's amazing too is twofold. One, that we've already done 6 of these. Like, we're talking about, guys that are putting, like, he was 33rd in a recent mock draft that I saw, first pick of the second round. The fact that there could be 6 or 7 Georgia players in the first round or right in those top 40 so picks is amazing.
And if you go back on our YouTube channel, you'll see the ones. We're doing these in order of how we think Georgia players will get drafted. And let's see, this would be the 7th that we've done. So Quay Walker, if you were to sneak in the first round based on what we're seeing, we think that probably means that George Pickens and Lewis Cine do the same thing. If Georgia is able to get 7 first-round picks, which would just be miraculous. I mean, that's more production.
Almost 25%. That's right. Amazing.
It's possible. We're not saying it's likely. I don't think that it is. I do think that it's going to be around 5 guys. Regardless, with Quay Walker, he's going to be a valuable asset for an NFL team. Just with the data, you start looking at it and his stats, 13 tackles against Florida this past season, 6 quarterback pressure against Alabama in one of the 2021 games. Not very much a big sack guy. I think this year we probably saw Nakobe Dean get more of those. But a lot of that action was created off of some movement with Quay Walker too.
Mm-hmm. He was a lot of times the first through, with the cross dog between the 2 backers, he was often the first guy through. And then Nakobe being able to use his brain and his ability to see and get through lanes, he was the second guy through in that action a lot of times.
He was, and I'm going to end the screen share here, and then we're going to get set to look at some of this game tape that we have from Quay Walker. I have to stop that screen share and do a whole thing.
I'll say, while you're doing that, the interesting thing about him, and we're going to see it in, I think, the second play that we look at, is when you look at comps for him, I think of, there's a guy who just got 5 years and $50 million from Green Bay. And, yep, we can see it on the screen. We're good to go. Like Devondre Campbell, who was a 4th-round pick of the Falcons back in the day, Dimitrov regime, but just got 5 years, $50 million from the Packers. The other guy that, to me, like, just athletically, he's not quite the athlete and doesn't have the production that Micah Parsons had at Penn State. But when you look at their relative athletic scores, they're borderline the same, like size, weight. Micah Parsons was a little faster than a 40, but if you look at their 20-yard split, the 10-yard split, the broad jump, like, it's almost exact. Now, he doesn't have the production that Parsons did coming out of Penn State, but from hey, can this guy be a off-ball linebacker like he played at Georgia? but also somebody we put on the edge in pass rush situations. I think he can be. And we're going to see some of that.
We always talked about Nakobe Dean's versatility and what he could do in the open field. Against Michigan on this play, you see that with Quay Walker. And just at the line of scrimmage, you can kind of see this right on this guy here. Got to track him.
Yep, and we lose him for a bit, I think, because of the camera view. But what's fun about this play is that you don't lose him in the end. This is 6'4", 240 pounds.
Boom!
Laying the wood. Absolute laying the wood to the Michigan quarterback. I think that was the freshman. That was McCarthy that was in the game at that point. And you're like, oh, he's not used to that. That doesn't happen in the Big Ten where the linebackers eat you alive like that. So, he's just, as a tackler, he's in his career this past season, he had Georgia's highest tackling grade and only missed 7 career tackles out of, I think, right around 140 attempts, right around 5%. So one of the best tackling rates on all of Georgia's defense, and this star-studded defense that we've talked so much about already.
Maybe you'd like to see him get on the other side of the receiver and kind of see this coming, but he's got his head turned around. He's staying with his guy. He knows the ball's not going to go there. I don't think anyone's going to complain about this, especially where the sticks are. No,
he's playing coverage until he absolutely can't, and then goes and, like I said, absolute just delivers a gut shot to the quarterback. And if that guy's going to run, you as a defender, you enjoy that. That's the time that you get to fully and freely do things against the QB.
You had mentioned what happens when you get Quay and he ends up playing the edge a little bit. This did happen because Nakobe Dean stayed in the center where he could really kind of use his vision to determine which way he was going to need to go. Quay Walker here really taking a spot in the run protection.
Yeah, and this is one where in teams like this, like Kentucky, Georgia did a lot of this against Alabama the second time around where they put their backer, either Nakobe or Quay, on the edge. And this is one where you could almost highlight, by the way, any of the defenders on this play. Like Jordan Davis completely and utterly does his deal, gets out of the way. All right, I'm going to make the play in the middle. Trayvon Walker. I think we actually used this same play with Trayvon Walker where he's at the tight end and playing run fit perfectly. Devontae Wyatt taking on the double team. Like Georgia's run fits. Like I saw a guy who does draft stuff. I forget for what website, but he was talking just glowingly about watching Georgia's run fits. And I'm like, it's all the time. It's all the time. And obviously there's another player, out of all the guys we see on the screen, there's only one who's not getting drafted, or 2 potential not getting drafted, and 1 would be if it wasn't for the issues he had off the field. So,
right.
But him quite on the edge, this is one where, all right, the tight end had no chance right there. Like he strikes him, disengages, and then goes and plays the ball and makes a play on the back.
Just really disrupts all the space that can be created. Not that there was much there with Jordan Davis, like you said. This was a pretty epic drive that Georgia had early in the game against Arkansas. I believe it was 2 false start penalties that Georgia created to start that drive. Georgia had already scored loud noon game at Sanford Stadium. Arkansas really just trying to find a way to punt and be safe in the situation. But Quay Walker really smart on this play.
Yeah, and I think this is 3rd and 24. And like this is just, you're just sitting there and reading the defender. And the key is that he breaks on the ball and breaks in the right spot. That's one of his 2, by the way. He only has 2 career pass breakups. That's one of them. So, it's
maybe a little early. I'm glad he didn't get a PI there, but maybe a tick early.
Can you cover in the NFL as a linebacker? Because if not, teams will pick on you all day, every day.
Well, and you see and
that's Trey Burks, by the way, running the route.
When Nakobe Dean is trailing this running back way out here, that leaves a whole middle of the field for Quay Walker. So it's natural that one of these receivers is going to try to go to that middle of the field on something quick because where Arkansas is, recognition of all that happening.
Yep. And it's one of those things with him where you could tell he wasn't a true like coverage linebacker. Hey, I'm going to go stay. Like we highlighted Nakobe Dean playing like legit man-to-man coverage in the slot. He was never that guy. He was never even put really much in that situation. But what he can do is what we see in this play, which is see what's going on and track what's going on, and then accelerate and just finish and go make tackles. Eyes on the back. Eyes in the backfield, sees the back. That's his guy. Tracks, finishes. Like I said, he didn't miss many in terms of missed tackles in his career.
On this particular play, let's remember the scenario here. So Keely Ringo just had the pick six to seal essentially the national championship for Georgia. Like, yes, it would be a miracle if Alabama weren't to do anything, but the defenders still have to focus on what they're doing.
Yep.
And so the place is going crazy. People are crying on the sidelines. I'm sure there's a lot of people drunk already. And
they're probably still that way. They're shed a tear nightly.
Yeah, as we were seeing this, like this play is not remembered in the history of the title game because a lot of people turned away and didn't see it. But Quay Walker focused on the job at hand. And I actually think all of that context of that scenario is something that will impress NFL scouts.
Yes, and that's when you talk about where he lined up, and I think the next play as well is the one where he's coming off the edge. Where did we see, like late in the season, once Adam Anderson was gone and not in the lineup anymore, what did you see Georgia do? You saw them put Channing Tindall a lot on the edge versus Quay Walker. And I think that a lot of that was the mental part of the things, whereas Channing was just a more explosive pass rusher in a way. But with Walker can come off the edge and here he just being an athlete, be a 6'4" long athlete right in the quarterback's face.
Yeah, you can't teach some of this.
No, but he only did it like in terms of playing on the edge at right at an outside linebacker type position. Only 49 of his 611 snaps were in that role. So it wasn't something we got to see much. Even when so when Adam Anderson would come in the game, he's that guy. When Tindall came in the game with him and Nakobe on the field, with Quay and Nakobe on the field as well, Tindall was the guy a lot of times on the edge. So I think this is an untapped thing for an NFL team to where the versatility part that we talked about. I might have a guy who first and second down can play the run, can not be a true liability in pass coverage, can play things in front of him and go track and be physical and make tackles, but also occasionally just line up on the edge on third down and go be big and fast and athletic.
And he makes himself big on this play, covering up as room as he can. Really good eyes on the ball. Here we go. Another play here against Georgia Tech.
This is one where you like just the skills as a pass rusher and a blitzer. He had, I think, a little over 100 pass rush snaps, right around 110 pass rush snaps on the season. No, this is what we just talked about earlier. He was usually the first guy in that cross dog action that you just highlighted on the screen. But watch him here dip, then rip through, gets held, and still, he's reaching out while getting held, still has the sack. And that's ability that you can't teach. And you can a little bit, but being able to be that athletic and do those things, I mean, he's that special of an athlete.
You hear about running backs having a little wiggle to them. Quay Walker has that around the line of scrimmage. He can really get through some smaller gaps, and he's got the athleticism and the power to get past really guys that are going to try to use arm motions to block him. You really have to get your weight into blocking him because he's a violent pass rusher as well. Didn't do it a whole lot at Georgia, but even in the open field, he just plays with one speed. He's very athletic. And watch
that right there. So he dips inside and then bends, shows the bend that you want to see, that potentially, hey, I'm going to put this guy on the edge. So dip, bend, and then rip through. Like all that that's how pass rushing is taught. And he is now also doing it at 6'4", 240 with 4.5 speed. Like that's legit. That's a high level, top 45 at worst, I think, player.
All right. So if there's anything to improve on, probably some of the open field stuff. Like I said, he didn't really get on the edge a whole lot, did a lot of his things within the box. And so that he was kind of punished against certain players. Again, this is going to be a future NFL running back here too. That this play is against.
Yeah, this is, and by the way, this and NFL evaluators want to see what they want to see. They want to see good on good. So this is Tank in the open field and gives Quay a little stop on a dime type deal. And in terms of this past season, he allowed 30 receptions on 35 targets for 260 yards. in his coverage. And we mentioned the 2 pass breakups, and those were both this year. So you've got reps where you get to see it. Now it's just about him evolving, and does he become more of the true, not necessarily off ball linebacker where that's in coverage a lot more, but the primary run defending inside, the bigger backer versus what he was in Georgia's defense.
Overall, with Quay Walker, I thought he made a lot of strides in the final year that he had at Georgia. In previous years, the athleticism was obvious, but he was a bit of a rotational player in a very crowded room of players. And I thought he really stood out, and in part because of Dayne and how steady he was, but that whole inside linebacker core was the defensive line is going to get a lot of the credit, especially in NFL draft circles. Georgia's championship hopes was because of the steady play along those inside linebackers all year long and the versatility that they had. Quay Walker does what he does because of Dayne, what he did, and vice versa. Together, they just work so well.
Yes, I 100% agree. And you look at Georgia's current roster, like I think I saw the Munden kid is going to miss some time in this spring, but like he profiles in that long, rangy, very super athlete, speed kind of player, much like Quay Walker in that role. And I think I see him in that role. But like you said, those 3 linebackers, like every level of that defense this past year, but those 3 linebackers were as legit as it gets. And you're going to see all 3 of them probably in the at least top 100.
Yeah.
And that's, in terms of how think we're on number 7 in terms of players of Georgia that we think are getting drafted in terms of order. Channing Tindall is obviously coming up here soon as well. But, that what they did at the pro day today, like, all the things, all the teams, the record number of people that were at the pro day, I think I saw 122 NFL personnel and coach, GM, all that kind of stuff at the pro day. It's phenomenal to watch, and Georgia's it's going to be a very fruitful draft for the Bulldogs.
You've been checking out all the mock drafts and even sending me some of your own to the PFF draft maker, which is always fun to do. And in fact, I need to send you some Saints ones that I've been working on. I know you do a lot of Falcons ones. What are you seeing from Quay Walker just in terms of where he's projected to go?
Well, in terms of big board, he's 79th on the PFF big board. And that's because of the production part. Like his overall grade this year was 72. He was one of in terms of that starting 11, or maybe the first 12, 13 guys that got a lot of playing time, he was down there on that list in terms of PFF grade. It's because of things like you see in coverage, because of the stuff like we saw there against Tank. But on Dane Brugler, he's 44th on his board. Daniel Jeremiah, he's 40th.
Both of those guys have really fallen in love with Walker. Like he's surged up their boards, I'd say, in the last 6 weeks.
Yeah, and there's also flashes of plays, like one in the championship game against Alabama that we didn't show here, that I think I put on Twitter a while back. But just you see the size, the speed, the traits. You see the traits that translate to the NFL game, the elite traits that you need to succeed at a high level on Sundays. And he has them. He just flat has them. And I remember like the sort of lasting impression for me with Quay was 2 things. One, watching him pregame warm up with I was on the sidelines for the Kentucky game. Like watching him pregame, like he's ginormous and just looks ginormous. And you see that guy running that fast. And another was in that same game, him almost hurting Devontae Wyatt or Devontae Wyatt hurting him, one or the other, but both of them were moving so fast and closing in on a tackle that the friendly fire was what hurt one of them. I can't remember exactly which one, but just watching those 2 guys and the speed with which they were moving, it's a different level. It's a 100% different level that they play. And I've even talked to some, people around the SEC and different coaching realms around the SEC, and you hear we felt like we were playing against 12 players. Yeah, because of the speed, and a lot of it's the speed at the linebacker position as much as speed everywhere else.
I have my game. This guy feels like a blank. It's just simply where what NFL team does it feel like this guy really becomes a part of, either by how they look in the jersey or the color or just the scheme, or historically that team drafts players like this. And I actually feel good about this one. I think Quay Walker feels like a Pittsburgh Steeler.
I mean, that's a very That's a very good choice. That's a very good choice.
And he might, if he goes there, he might be one of those guys that's just like, their third best defender for 12 years.
And that's a great place to be and a great place to play defense and all those things. I thought the irony would be if somebody like the Titans drafted him, given that he chucked the Tennessee hat, like he should go back to the Tennessee team, the Tennessee NFL team.
Well, no team in the NFL, I guess unless Tampa wants to go with the creamsicle, has that shade of orange in its repertoire.
Nor should they.
Even the Bears is a little bit of a deeper orange.
Yes.
But I think Tampa's the closest thing. So I don't think he'll have to flirt with that orange anytime soon. So that's Quay Walker. I think that he'll end up probably being a high second-round pick. But if a team really falls in love with him, he's got some late first-round potential. Either way, I think he'll find himself in a good spot in the NFL. Even if he goes to where he's behind on the depth chart a little bit, which is unlikely where he's going to get drafted, he'll make an instant impact in special teams, if nothing else.
100%. And you heard Kirby Smart talk about it today. I heard his interview with Matt Stinscomb on the SEC Network, where the teams were saying something to Quay about not being a starter, or not Quay, but Channing Tindall. And he's like, hey, I started for 4 years on special teams.
Yeah.
Quay Walker played a lot of special teams too.
Mm-hmm.
That big, that fast, like he played a ton of special teams. And you're an instant contributor in the NFL because of the size-speed combination on special teams. 100%.
So this is our 7th NFL draft preview. We're going to get through the rest of these Georgia guys before the draft begins. We'll also just do a recap at the end of what we think that how this stuff has changed, because I do think some guys have moved up a little bit, maybe a couple falling back some.
Unfortunately, probably down after today. Unfortunately, I think for one specifically,
someone that ran closer to a 5 than a 4.
Yes.
We'll just leave it at that. We'll get to them later on. Hey, thanks for watching this. If you like what we're doing, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. That helps us a whole lot. We just all of our goals that we're trying to. We want to be the biggest source of UGA information and entertainment. I'm here more for the jokes and things than all the news breaking in, the data and the film stuff. That's why I have Brent here to tell me what I have wrong. But we make a good team, and we appreciate everyone for watching this and supporting what we do at UGAsports.com. For Brent Rollins, I am Dayne Young. We'll see you next time.